Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kennedy, welcome. I enjoyed our conversation last month in our office. And thank you for remembering, as you did again today, my uncles who we talked about, Morris and Lauren and Jean, who all have recently passed away from Parkinson's, grew up in a farm family. That was kind of you to remember them, so thank you for that. Let me start by asking you a question about children and the safety of children. President Biden's administration, his HHS, issued a rule, so it's binding, requiring that every doctor in America, including pediatricians who receive any kind of federal funding, so that's anybody who takes ACA funding, anybody who takes CHIP funding, this is almost every health provider in America, requiring them to conduct gender transition and gender so-called affirming procedures. So that means hormones, that means puberty blockers, that means surgeries in some cases. They imposed that rule on doctors across the country. This has been litigated, and it has been actually stopped by a couple of courts who found that it was way outside of HHS's jurisdiction. My question to you is, will you rescind this rule that imposes this radical policy, and talk about being anti-science, this radical policy on just about every pediatrician in the United States of America?
Yes, I will. And by the way, that rule is anti-science. The most thorough meta review on gender-affirming care has come out in the Cass report, which reports really catastrophic impacts on children. And that is science. It's a meta review of all the existing scientific studies. But even more just from a common sense, if you're a patient, do you really want somebody performing surgery on you who is morally opposed to that surgery? It doesn't make any sense. We need to embrace diversity in this country. There are people who believe that's important. I respect them. We should hear them out. We should debate. We should have a congenial conversation. There are also people who believe that it is an atrocity, and they need to be listened to too. And we need to embrace diversity and make room for diversity in this country and not force people to do things that are against their conscience.
And let me just point out that on this rule, what's particularly pernicious about it is we're talking about gender transition surgeries, gender transition care on minor children. This rule purported to preempt all state law. So in states like mine and many others, where the voters have said, we don't want gender transition procedures performed on minors, the Biden administration attempted to use federal money and force pediatricians to do it anyway. So I'm glad to hear you say you'll rescind that rule. I think it's terrific for the safety of children.
And Senator, I would add that we don't let children drink. We don't let them drive an automobile because they have bad judgment. They are flooded with hormones. Their brains are still in formation. Their sexuality is still in formation. Allow them to make judgments about that are going to have life-changing, forever implications for the rest of their life at that age is unconscionable, particularly in light of the Cass report.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you a question about NIH research, if I may. I know this is something that you care a lot about. Under the first Trump presidency—
And I do want to add that people who have gender differences should be respected. They should be loved. But loving them does not sometimes love means saying no to people.
Let me, on NIH, under the first Trump presidency, HHS stopped new NIH research that involved human fetal tissue from elective abortions. Now, you were asked about this sort of tangentially yesterday by Senator Cantwell, and I want to get your quote right. You said to her correctly, you said stem cell research today can be done on umbilical cords and you don't need any fetal tissue, which is correct. My question to you is, will you reinstate President Trump's policy that ensures that no federal research and no federal tax dollars is conducted on fetal tissue taken from elective abortions?
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me ask you just about Title X. You were asked about this yesterday too, and I think I understand your answer. I just want to be sure I've got it crystal clear. Title X, which prohibits the funding of the use of federal taxpayer funding for abortions or to flow to entities like Planned Parenthood that perform abortions or refer people to abortions. You were asked yesterday if you would support President Trump's rule that says no Title X funding for those who perform abortions or refer people to abortions. I think your answer was yes, you would reinstate that rule. I just want to be sure I'm right about that.
Yes.
Fantastic. Last point that I have for you, on mifepristone, the chemical abortion drug, you said yesterday that you would study its safety. I think that's good. I want to make an additional point here just about how the Biden administration changed the rules on mifepristone that I hope that you'll take into consideration, because you pointed out, I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman, you pointed out that we need to honor the wishes of voters and states and their right to set life policy. I just point out that the Biden administration's rule on mifepristone, which they did after the Dobbs decision, means that in any state, including ones like mine, where voters or state legislators say, we don't want abortion performed after a certain point, if the Biden administration rule on chemical abortion stands and you can mail in these abortion drugs without a doctor visit or referral, that means no state ban, no state decision, no voter decision is going to matter. We're going to have a one-size-fits-all policy set here in Washington. I hope you'll take that into consideration.
I will implement President Trump's policies.